Well, hello and welcome to this extra special session of ExecuNet Masterclass. I'm your host, as always, Tony Vlahos. No matter what I do, my job search goes nowhere. That's a common refrain from frustrated executives looking for work. Job search can leave you feeling angry, hopeless, depressed, and incapable of controlling your own destiny. But with the right advice and support, you can get around even the sturdiest job search roadblocks. The purpose of today's panel discussion is to help you understand what's blocking your way, show you how to move past it, and set you on the path to getting a great new job. And I think it will. Today's talk is a part of our daily commitment here at ExecuNet to connect you with trusted advisors like my three friends here who can help you create the transformative results you want in your career, the world of work, and your well being. I know you're eager to meet them all, so real quick, the format for today's talk. This will be an advice-filled question and answer session. You may, of course, chat in questions, and I'll do my best to include them in our conversation. For technical questions, you can chat in, and my amazing colleague Kim will help you out. Finally, please complete your evaluation form before you go. I know that the panelists value your feedback, and Kim and I do too. It really does help us serve you better. So I'm going to keep the introductions brief. You can read about them on the slides you're looking at. But here we are. Don Weintraub is a renowned executive career coach with over 15 years of executive recruiting experience and many more years as a senior executive and hiring manager. We have with us as well Jade Goodhue, who provides strategic guidance and coaching to help executive members land their next opportunity. And she will help you with everything from uncovering your unique value proposition and defining competitive differentiators to advancing your career. And we also have Marsha Mawad, who's an ExecuNet career strategist. Marsha leads monthly executive conferences on resume writing, developing LinkedIn profiles, designing career search strategy and networking, and the list is endless, as they say. So, Don, Jade, and Marsha, welcome to the panel. How are you all?
Thank you, Tony.
Great to see
Thank
you.
you.
My pleasure. So I'd like to begin with online job applications, but before we do that, I thought it would be important, and I'll randomly tap Don for this task, to talk to our audience, please, about the current state of the executive hiring market. What do you see is happening as we move from what is now February into later in the year, and what does that mean to an executive who's in search? Don, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was coaching an individual earlier today who, like many we get to talk with, is searching for the first time in many years. And he said to me, well, how quickly can you get me my next job? And I said to him, well, to be honest with you, I can't get you your next job. I can help you with your next job or help you find your next job. But ultimately, the task falls right back on your shoulders. There are some things that each candidate needs to do. They need to do them correctly. They need to be willing to ask for, receive, and take advice, because job search has changed dramatically over the past, certainly past 10 years. And what tends to happen is people are approaching finding a job, especially those of you on the call who haven't had to look in a while. You more often than not approach the job in a way that you did years ago when you were successful finding the job you just had.
Mm-hmm.
So ask us questions. We'll help you to understand how the market has changed, how what you need to do has changed, the amount of time likely to find your next role. But ultimately, let me just put a thought into your head. Most of you on this call, without even knowing who's here, understand marketing and sales a lot better then you understand job search. We view the job search process as a marketing and sales process. Your resume, your LinkedIn profile are designed to get you noticed and for somebody to reach out to you. If you're not getting the amount of feedback or inquiries you think you deserve, more times than not, it's based on how you're going to market.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of your push strategy. You need a pull strategy to be easily found. My guess is that if I were looking at many of your LinkedIn profiles today, you would be unfindable. And then once you get the opportunity to get in the door and to be able to compete, then it becomes a sales process with only one winner. And so those opportunities can't be wasted. You need to be prepared for each of those, and you need to be prepared to win. So think about what we're talking to you today through a marketing and sales lens, and I think it'll help you to understand the advice we're about to give you.
Don, thank you for that and for framing things the way you just did. So let's get right into it. And Marcia, this question is going to ultimately come back to you, but I want to read one that came to me from one of our executive members, and it goes like this. Hey, Tony, I love when it starts that way. 5 months ago, I lost my job as the VP of sales for a large retailer in the Northeast. I've been actively applying to employment opportunities on numerous websites. I'm sure that activity sounds very familiar to all of our listeners. I can't get an interview to save my life. And it's weird because I've always gotten interviews pretty easily before. I must have filled out nearly 100 online job applications so far, not one interview. What am I doing wrong? Yours, Mackenzie. So, Marcia, the question, of course, is the only jobs you can apply for and get are posted job openings. Is that true?
No.
No. Okay.
In fact, I coach a lot of people on this issue. And with all due respect to LinkedIn, which is a great site, I think, for networking, applying for jobs on LinkedIn, I would think you should go out and bury your resume in the backyard. You may find somebody that finds you quicker there. And again, I say this with all due respect. Applying online makes you feel like you're doing something, but it's essentially like playing solitaire. It's just a game by yourself. I would say instead of spending time online, let people in your network know that you're looking for new opportunities, because there's one thing about all of us, we love to help each other. Mm-hmm. So I often advise people, don't even look for job openings, because so many people and so many companies do what I call opportunity hires. So if someone has a very strong resume, they have a great LinkedIn profile. And what Don was saying about the LinkedIn profile, maybe you'll never be found. But what's worse, if you are found, you have a very forgettable profile. So what good did it do you to be found? So I would say you go on LinkedIn, you let your network know that you're available, that you're out there, what you're looking for. And then always, I suggest to people, when you make the ask, also give something and say to that person, and if you ever need me, I'm right here to help you. Mm-hmm. So it's not all about a pernicious relationship. You're really going into it very symbiotically. And I think the people that I work with, that's where we have the greatest success. Mm-hmm. And we have had several people that were hired, again, through the opportunity hire. There wasn't a position, but when they saw the qualifications of this person, they made a position or an opportunity for them. So when you're applying on job, you're just going into the headwinds. I mean, when you're applying online, you're going into the headwinds. But if you go through the side door and put it out there that you are available, but in doing that, don't put it on your LinkedIn profile, because we see people with their LinkedIn profile that says, looking for work. Well, you just might as well say, I've got rabies. No one's going to call you. So never, ever, ever do that. So that's what I see, and that's what's my suggestion. And keep up your confidence, because a lot of people will say, "Well, I've sent messages to 10 people and only one returned my phone call or returned my message." I said, "That's good." I said, "This is not a game where the cards are stacked in your favor." So don't lose confidence, and don't lose your confidence in yourself is the greatest thing I would say.
Terrific insight. Jade, of course, you work with so many senior level people, and they are going to look at online job postings. Could you offer some advice on how to use them productively, effectively to advance your search?
I would first say that, the statistics that we see is that 85% of professionals at around the 200K mark, they're not going to get their next position via a job posting. How it breaks down is about 65% will get it through their network, like Marsha was saying. The next would be 20% via recruiter, and the final 15% is through job postings. So what does that tell us? It tells us we want to be doing all three, but our focus of effort should be the first two, the network and the recruiter. Like I believe Marsha was saying, if we just spend that time online doing the job posting, it feels good. We're getting a lot of work done, and we're running 100 miles going nowhere. So with the job search, with online postings, again, having your social media updated, because LinkedIn is really, it's a sophisticated keyword software. So you want to make sure that you have the right keywords in the right certain areas, or you're not going to be found. I can't tell how many times I've done strategy calls or in sessions when I've tried to find the people, their LinkedIn profile, and they have a common name and I cannot find them at all. And if I do find them, they're on the second or third page. And when I see their LinkedIn profile, they just slap their resume right onto it. And that's not how to do it. So if you're going to do the online, really make sure that your search optimized. And two, with the resumes, what I see a lot is, executives, they have these fancy resumes with these 2 columns, and what happens if you go through keyword softwares, those columns, they jumble up the words and it doesn't make it through. So if you keep applying with that same resume, you're not going to get through the gatekeeper. And at the same time, you want to make sure it's centered around your value, but you're keyword optimized for what they're looking, or you're not going to get through the electronic gatekeeper. So I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you. And we're going to come back to resumes in a little while. I want to continue on with roadblock number 2, right? Recruiter silence. This is a big one. In fact, I'm having chats as I sit here from our listeners saying, talk about recruiters. So we're going to get to recruiters, guys. All right. And the letter that I received around this was like this. Dear Tony, I've been in the job market for 4 months now, and my experience with recruiters has been terrible. I've put a lot of time into crafting my cover letters, polishing my resume, and pushing it out, and I hear crickets. What gives? Are recruiters truly incapable of providing real feedback? Most important, how can I work with them more effectively? And this one is signed Michael. So Don, let's turn to you. What does give? What's the reality dose that executives need to get about recruiters from the beginning?
Okay, so for those who aren't aware, excuse me, before joining ExecuNet, I ran a company that had a recruiting arm for 17 years. So I'm one of those guys who 9 or 10 years ago when I joined ExecuNet would have responded to any inquiries, but probably today would not. The recession and the advent of, or the influence of technology on searches has completely reshaped the way recruiters behave. First of all, I would say half the recruiters were eliminated by sites like LinkedIn. Why would they pay me the exorbitant fees I used to ask to place a candidate when they could find those same candidates by doing keyword searches online. So there are fewer and fewer and fewer recruiters. Most of them specialize in a particular area or particular level or a combination of both. And unlike the good old days when recruiters would have file cabinets filled with resumes, they no longer are collectors of resumes. And so unless they have the specific job for which you are the perfect candidate, they're probably not going to reply to you. So what's the key to the recruiter kingdom? It's really a very similar key that I would give you to, for those of you who are compelled to continue to apply to jobs online. You need to get an introduction. You need someone who knows the recruiter to contact that recruiter on your behalf and say, look, a guy I know is going to be reaching out to you this afternoon. He's eminently qualified for a job he saw posted by your company. I know you typically don't talk to strangers. Do me a favor and take his call. That's the only way that I have found to get around recruiters who don't respond, and or instead of applying to jobs blindly online or like cold calling, if you find a company that you're interested in and it has a job posted, find someone you know who knows someone in that company to get you in the back door. Without those kinds of introductions, I think those crickets will continue to be heard indefinitely.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Don. Marcia, anything you'd like to add to Don's comments?
I would. One of the things that, especially for the executives that are still employed, that are working, I'm sure you have recruiters reaching out to you or you're working with recruiters. Work with those recruiters. Keep a relationship with them so that when you need them, you can call them and you have an introduction. The other thing, and I completely agree with Don, find people, I don't want to do a sales pitch, but those of us at ExecuNet, we work with recruiters all day long. So we have relationships with recruiters. Maybe there's ways that we can make introductions to recruiters. So you need to find your go-between to get you to a recruiter, because why would a recruiter call you? Because they're working for the company that has retained them. They're not working for you. So they have, if you look at time management, it's a waste of their time to be calling you. And this day and time, you get crickets.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say work on those relationships before you need them.
Terrific. Thank you. I'm getting a chat around salaries, and the chat goes, should you ever tell a recruiter your salary? I want to go around the table and get each of your insight on this. So Jay, let's start with you. Are there situations in which, you want to tell a recruiter what you made at your previous position?
I advise people, yes, give them a ballpark of what the lowest you're willing to go and what you would actually like. The reason is if it's something that you're not willing to do, but you're leading them along and not being open about it, you're wasting their time, because inevitably you're not going to say anything, you move forward with it, and then at the last minute you pull back and they've invested so much time in you and they have no idea what's going on, and it's just because you don't want to disclose the salary. Now, obviously, you don't want to highball it. That's why I say I would say give a range of where you would like to be, what you're willing to do, and the lowest you're willing to go. And think of it too, even though you might not get the salary, just let them know that you're willing to negotiate some other intangibles or maybe working up to it, or advancement opportunities. So don't fixate on the salary itself, but be upfront about it, or else you're going to waste your time and you're going to waste their time, and then it's just going to really almost stain a relationship in that sense.
Don?
As a recruiter, if you didn't tell me what you were earning, I wouldn't talk with you. And the reason for that is I know as the recruiter what the company is willing to pay. So if the company is willing to pay $200,000 and you're currently making $300,000, then you're probably not a good target for them. If they're willing to pay $200,000 and you're currently earning $100,000, then you're probably not a good target for them. So I would couch the language. In my last job, I earned north of 180, and it included a whole variety of things. I'd rather not go into detail at this point unless it's absolutely necessary, but just know I'm looking for something that is comparable and or will keep me whole. So you don't give them an actual number. As Jade said, you give them a range or you use language that gives you some flexibility. But again, from a recruiter's perspective, I need to know what you are earning to know whether or not you're in the ballpark for what my client is willing to pay.
Marcia, are you good? Anything else?
Yes, I agree
All right.
with both what Don and Jade have said. Don't play games with your recruiter because they're going to be your ambassador. And you've got to have an honest relationship with that recruiter because I'm like Don. If a person wants to play games with me and talk cute, I'm not going to recommend them to anyone. You've just got to be honest. Your recruiter is your broker, your ambassador, and be honest with them.
Well said. So we're going to keep moving right along onto resumes, also known in some circles as I'm not getting interviews, right? I know we're moving very quickly, folks. There are lots of chats coming in, questions, comments. I love that. Thank you. Kim is going to chat out to you in a second ways that you could get in touch with our career services group, which includes Jade and Don and Marcia and so many other amazing people who can help you one-on-one achieve the results you want and get to that next level as quickly as you want. So that's going to come to you soon, but let's continue. And again, this is an overview. We're getting to as many areas as we can. For more detailed information, follow the link that you'll get from Kim. So, as I said, resumes, and here's the letter. This one came from Janet, who's a COO, and she writes, "Dearest Tony," I already love Janet. "Dearest Tony, I'm not getting interviews and I can't figure out what the problem is. I was laid off in January of, I guess it's this year, so it's not that long ago. In addition to the usual concerns like how quickly will I find my new job and how will I pay the mortgage, I was worried about gaps in my resume." And I'm going to summarize here Janet's note to me and say that she had a, quote, Grand Canyon-sized gaping hole on her CV. She had left her career to raise her children. And she says she's given employers the impression she's taking more breaks than an aging rock band. I love that. So, so the question is, has anyone got any advice for Janet? Marcia, let's continue with you. Does everything you've ever done ever have to be on your resume? Let's start there.
No, because we usually suggest you don't want to go back more than 10 years. And then you just do and if you want to put additional information, just put other professional engagements and then just list them. But, think about your resume. It's not written for the purpose of your mother. Your resume is written for the purpose of getting a job. And a lot of people, you want to talk about everything you've ever done. You don't want your resume to be like that. You want your resume to be like a soap opera. So people read a little bit and it's so exciting, they tune in for the next piece and the next piece. So your resume should be an engaging read. And a lot of resumes, because we do resume reviews, and I'll look at a resume and I'm going to think, oh my God, this is going to be the most boring hour I'm ever going to spend. This resume, this person looks so boring. And you get on the phone and they're lively, great personality and all of that. And I'm saying, where's the disconnect? This is not the person I'm reading about. So you want to make sure that resume comes alive. If you're vivacious or whatever, you want a vivacious resume. You want a resume that tells your story in a resume fashion. And those are the kinds of resumes that get attention. One recruiter told me, I don't remember every place this person's ever worked, but I sure do remember their story and how well their resume engaged me when I was reading it. So to me, that's key. I mean, some people just push stuff out there, and it's boring when you are not a boring person. So you've got to make sure that your resume tells the story of who you really are. It's huge. It's a sales document. It's a brochure. It's your calling card. So that's what I say about resumes. And also make sure that there are no typographical errors. I looked at one resume and it said education 1880 to 1984. I thought that person's been in school a long time. Should have said 1980.
They must know a lot of things.
Yeah, but guess what? I remembered that person, but for all the wrong reasons.
All right, let's take that last. Thank you for that. That's really memorable. So, main do's and don'ts of the resume. I heard typos. I understand that. Jade, let's turn to you, then we'll go back to Don. What are some of the main do's and don'ts? You've seen so many resumes, probably all of it. In no particular order, what should people avoid doing and ideally do more of?
The biggest thing that I do see is putting your resume in a your responsibilities. What are the job responsibilities formats? The document really isn't about you. The document is about the challenges you overcame and what you accomplished in the midst of those challenges. So putting what your accomplishments are. So putting things like in charge of day-to-day activities, in charge of reports, filings, these sort of things. No one cares, quite frankly. You're there in a leadership position. So what did you accomplish as a leader? What were the results that you formed? And capture their attention in, you have to think of it. These are busy people. Doesn't matter what time, decade you're at, they're busy. They're not going to read line by line. So putting things, just arranging it in a format where they see your results as quickly as possible. And that's what's going to position you as a top candidate, someone who gets results, who overcomes challenges, and has a value proposition. That's the biggest thing I see is people position themselves really as middle managers, and they don't brand their value, they don't brand who they are, they don't brand what they bring to the table or what differentiates them. It's job description. I've got results, I've proven record, I'm experienced, but there's no results. There's no metrics. There's no value. It's just a lot. It's very dense. It's very wordy, and it's not uncommon that I get a resume upward of 3+ pages. And when I see that, I think, dear God, this poor person, he's never going to have his resume read. And I look through it, and it's very dense, it's very monotonous, it's very wordy, there's typographical errors, as Marsha was saying. So really comb through it because it looks unprofessional if you have those errors. If it's 3 to 5 pages, truncate it down, anything 10 or anything past 2,000. And if you're just describing your job description and day-to-day activities, you're not going to get positioned as a top candidate. So those are some of the most common things I've seen. And not branding your value proposition. And unfortunately, most people, we can solve everyone else's problems, including world peace, but we cannot solve our own. That's the same exact reason why you have no idea what your value proposition is, or else they would be on the resume. And if you think you can do it, you would have done it by now. And it's a little harsh, but it's the truth. So those are the main things I see. It's very competitive. So brand your value. And if you don't know what it is, we can help you.
So Don, I'm getting chats from people about things like keywords and ATSs. Let's talk about those, but also let's come back to Janet's problem, which was a large gap in her resume. Talk to me about Janet's problem and other things that are in the do and don't category.
So again, I'll give you this through a recruiter's perspective. Mm-hmm. When there are gaps in the resume, the recruiter, the reader, will fill those gaps in. And it usually is to your disadvantage. So if you were home raising your children, say it.
Mhm.
Fill in the gap. Anyone who wouldn't understand that you took X number of years or months off to raise your family isn't somebody you want to work for anyway. So eliminate gaps. If you're currently unemployed, figure out a way of not having that jump off the page. Think of things you could do to fill that in. Volunteer work, taking a course, go to somebody you know extremely well and say to them, listen, I'm willing to do some work for your company for nothing if you'll allow me to list your company as my current employer. No one asks you, well, what were you earning in that job? Oh, I wasn't earning anything. But at least it's a way of filling in the gap. So gaps hurt. Regarding resumes, both Marcia and Jade, I think, have given you some really good suggestions. I'd put it like this. You get somewhere in the neighborhood of 6.5 seconds from all research that's been done when someone looks at your resume. So you need to be able to capture their attention quickly. What do most readers of resumes look for? They look for numbers. They look for your business impact. They look for things that you contributed to your past employers. They want to see measurable results. Most resumes lack that either in their entirety or the focus, as Jade said, is more on what you did than what you accomplished. And you need an executive summary at the top of your document. And what does that need to include? A compelling value proposition, 4 or 5 accomplishments with metrics, and 20 plus keywords. In many ways, keywords are the most critical area to being found. It's like any other keyword optimization if you are marketing an online product, and you're marketing an online product, Most people don't know what keywords to use, and they don't know how to place them, where to place them, and then how to separate them in order for the resume to be most findable when you're going through an applicant tracking system. So it's knowing what the keywords are, having 20 plus of them, putting them in the right place, and making sure they're separated by bars with a space on either side. And don't put in phrases or sentences. That's not a keyword. A keyword is a keyword or a word or two. And most people don't know how to do that well.
Mhm. Thank you. Our audience has picked up on some keywords that we've all been using the last 15 or 20 minutes, including words that are familiar to us like brand, but their correlation to the job search for many who haven't done it before is sort of mysterious. So, Marcia, let's turn to you. I want to stop for a moment and talk about personal branding a bit and things that we deliver to our ExecuNet audience that frankly they may not have heard before. So could you just break down for us a bit when we talk about things like our selling proposition and branding, and Jay touched on those beautifully earlier, but I'd like to hear you replay for us when we are talking about job search, and in that context, how do we think about branding and selling proposition and collateral coming together to help us achieve a result? Could you just put that out there for us?
Sure. Well, we talked about the job search process is like sales and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to make sure all of your collateral has a theme. So if you're an executive, what kind of executive are you? What have you accomplished? What's your brand? If I hire you, how do I know if I'm going to get mayonnaise or ketchup? So your brand is it's where you're strong. For instance, I'm a CEO who has led 3 organizations to great profitability or whatever, but you be able to tell that in 2 or 3 sentences. It's like, and if you can't do that, you're going to lose your audience. It's like going to a cocktail party and you're asking someone, how are you? And they think it's a real question. You want to be able to talk about who you are in 2 or 3 sentences. That's your brand. Most people, you ask them, because I do a lot of coaching, and I'll say, tell me 5 key things that you're best in class. Well, it takes us about 15 minutes to get around to those 5 key things, and I keep having to do a lot of clarifying, coaching. What you should know going into the job market, the top 5 things that you're world class. And then you don't only tell me those top 5 things, you give me evidence, because anybody can talk about words. So what we want to talk about and what's going to make you strong in your brand is, this is who I am and this is the evidence of what I've done. And then in your LinkedIn profile, you also want to, in the summary, let people know a little bit about who you are as a person. For instance, I'm working with one person and he didn't know how to describe really what he did as a leader. But I found out that he leads a competitive mountain biking team and they win all kinds of trophies. So I said to him, Francois, what do you do in competitive mountain biking that makes you a great leader at the job? Well, he started talking to me just excitedly. You want to put something like that in your LinkedIn profile, because, competitive mountain biking, a leader, a CEO. Now I'm going to read your profile. So I've looked at your resume. I see 2 or 3 lines of who you are as a brand, as a CEO or a leader. Then I see 4 or 5 things that you're best in class. And then I read your LinkedIn profile and, oh my goodness, he's a competitive mountain biker. And this is what he's learned about leadership in competitive mountain biking. I am going to remember that candidate because he or she, they've made themselves unique.
Mm-hmm.
So you want all your collateral to be integrated and aligned, but you don't want it all to tell the exact same story.
That's great. Don, anything to add to what Marcia said? That was awesome. Thank you.
I've been trying to add to what Marcia has been saying for years, and I'm
That's
usually
great.
at a loss for words. One other thing I would suggest, I want to go half step back to the resume for a moment.
Sure.
When you're talking about your experience, here's what we recommend in terms of the format. Tell us who the company is you work for, how long you were there, what your title is. Now, here's the part that most people don't do. Tell the reader why you were hired. A hiring decision is normally a problem-solving decision. There's an opportunity, there's a need. They don't just go out and hire people because they want to increase overhead. So why were you brought on board? Now I know sort of the challenge you were brought on to address. Then tell me how you addressed it. That's your job description. I did the following things to address the issue that got me hired in the first place. And then the bullets are, here's what I accomplished. Here are the measurable things I did, the business impact I had, the legacy I left, however you want to phrase it. But wherever possible, make sure it includes an actual metric. That's the experience section, and that's the way we advise you to design it.
Terrific. Thank you. So we're going to move on from the resume to the interview, right? So let me find the question I had about the interview. It's quite a good one too. All right, here we go. Hi, Tony. No dear this time. Sorry, guys. For years, I've heard that I need to, quote, sell myself as a qualified candidate when I go in a job interview, but I don't know how to do it. How do I sell myself exactly? Signed, James. Jade, let's start with you. I guess the question for me is selling yourself on a job interview generally the right idea?
No, the right idea you want to have is constantly throughout the job search process is positioning yourself as the easiest choice to hire. And when you're in the interview, it's not about tooting your horn or selling yourself. It's, again, I come back to value. It always starts with value. It's your cornerstone. Your I like to put it this way: your value is like fine wine. It's never gonna change. It's just gonna get better with time. So starting with your value and why it's so important, sometimes we even coach you to, start from your childhood. Why is that value so important to you? Because that's the story, that's the through line. You have 6.25 seconds, as John said, to capture their attention on a piece of paper. Same thing with an interview. You want to capture their attention. And studies show that the primary way of capturing someone's attention is by telling them a story. So it's not about selling yourself, it's telling an authentic story with your value as a cornerstone, and why that's important to them and what kind of impact that's going to leave on their company.
Thank you for that. So,
Mhm.
Don, let's move from Jade's answer to the next question. What are some strategies for preparing for the interview and for effectively interviewing?
Um, here's the way I describe this. For those on the call, most of you have done interviewing in the past. And my operative assumption, continually confirmed by people I'm coaching, is that you only interview people who on paper seem qualified for the job. Why else would you bother interviewing them if you didn't think they were qualified? Most people who go into an interview feel like they have to reconfirm that they're qualified for the job. What is it then, if they were pre-qualified, that you were looking to learn during the interview that you couldn't have found out by reading their resume? And the answer I got it just this morning and I got it just yesterday, is a 3-letter word. And the 3-letter word is fit. Most interviews are about fit. And then it's fit for what? It's fit for the role. It's fit for the culture. It's fit to work with the team we have assembled. It's fit to work with me. It's fit to work with my boss. It's fit to work with our customers. And then we have a conversation of how do you determine fit? And it's intuitive. It's based on again, a metaphor I use is you bait hooks, you put them out there. As Jade said, many of them could be about your early years, where you grew up, what kind of upbringing you had. If I can relate to that, I feel immediately this feeling of, wow, this person would be a good fit for our organization. Or maybe it's like Marcia said, you're a competitive bike racer, and I too am into competitive sports. So the interview and selling yourself in an interview needs to be complementary to what's already in the resume. Because if the resume didn't talk about your work-related qualifications, you wouldn't be in the interview at all. Now it's about convincing the interviewer or interviewers that you would be a good fit in their company.
Mhm. Marcia, question for you. And it's going to seem like, well, of course it's blank. Who wins the offer at the end? Is it always the best candidate?
No.
Okay.
And it's hard to say this, but you have to hear it. The one that wins in the end is the one who has the attributes that are most in alignment with the organization. People recruit based on competencies. They hire based on attributes. When Don and I used to work together in another job, we would always ask ourselves after we interviewed a candidate, no matter what their qualifications, we would ask ourselves, because we traveled all the time, we would ask ourselves this question: is this someone we would want to be stuck in a snowstorm in Minneapolis with? And if the answer was no, we didn't hire them, because we figured there are people out there who have got the skills, the talent, the attributes that we would like to be stuck in a snowstorm with. Because to us, that just said everything. And that's what Don talks about, the fit. And it's not so much likability, it's the fit. And the other thing, going back to selling yourself, I think that is the worst thing you could ever try to do in an interview. Just be who you are. You know, do the job great, and if it doesn't, you're better off. Because if you're not who you are authentically, then the employer really doesn't know who they're hiring. So just be who you are.
Right.
And let me just add something else to fit, Tony, please. Fit is a two-way street. As the candidate, you're assessing fit as well.
Yes.
You're saying, is this the kind of company I want to work in? Is this the kind of culture I'd be happy in? Is this the kind of boss I want to work for? I mean, so fit is being assessed. They're assessing you, you're assessing them, and if the fit doesn't work, then it probably is time to just move on to the next opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Well said. And clearly we're picking up on some very core themes here, right, everyone? About fit and being who you are. We've heard these things, which we've tied to your story, your brand. These are the powerful difference makers, right? So thank you all. And we've got a lot, well, not a lot, but lots of ground to cover still, right? So let's turn to the next roadblock real quick. Networking. This is one that just makes people's stomachs turn. But here we go anyway, right? Tony, I feel incredibly awkward whenever I try to network. I don't know how to do it. I feel like I'm trying to sell too hard. It makes me feel icky. Help me sincerely, Brandon G. So, Jade, is there a way to reduce the schmoozing ick factor when it comes to networking? What's your advice to people?
I used to do a lot of networking events, and the biggest it factor was when people would come up to me and throw me a business card and then walk away without getting to know me or giving value. So I'm very selective with my networking in that sense of, when you're going to do a network, do your homework. Who is going to be there? What vendors? Who are the speakers? Who are the players? Who's the organizer? Go in maybe 15, 10 minutes early, maybe even 20 minutes, because the people who show up early are the players. They're there for purpose. Be there for purpose. You don't have to handshake everyone, but have, I wouldn't want to say targets, but have intentions. Have a plan, know who you want to speak to, and be ready, obviously, to just have conversations and make the small talk. But if you go in with a plan, you have the people you want already pre-selected, you're there early, you're gonna probably meet the movers and shakers who you want to talk to anyways. And that's really going to help. And then once you've accomplished your mission, you can leave, you can stay, you can have fun, you can relax, and just get to know people. And it's good to just make contacts in the sense of, don't focus on you, focus on what are they looking for. They don't necessarily want business, or maybe, they're looking for, if it's a networking, as in someone else is looking for a job, there might be all looking for one particular job. But networking isn't about finding your thing. Networking is about making a connection to someone who might know someone who might know someone who might know someone. So figuring out what people want. Don't focus on you. Focus on what other people want, and then you can really strategize from there on who can help position you, how you can help them. Because if you help them find a player that's in your Rolodex, they're more likely to find someone for you. So thinking about it really strategically, vice going in and letting everyone know what you're looking for, and then having other people do the same thing, going with a plan.
Thank you for that. On that same wavelength, Marcia, social anxiety is something that many of us feel in different circles. How do we deal? I mean, are there opportunities that just aren't great networking opportunities for some of us, so they might be for others? For example, some of us are very comfortable working in a large room. Some of us just would like a quiet dinner somewhere. So, what's your take on that? Is that some good advice?
Social networking, I think, is key and critical. Um, for instance, one of your best social networks is through your volunteer work. The other social network, now this could give people a little anxiety, but I remember when I was traveling all the time, my best social network was on the airplane. I always got off the airplane with 3 or 4 or 5 business cards. I met the head of CBS on an airplane. I met the president of Visa on an airplane, and I kept those cards. So you never know who you're going to meet. In fact, I was just talking with a CEO the other day who spoke, and I said, "Where did you learn to speak that way? What's your experience?" And they started talking to me. And I said, "Well, at your company, do you ever have, great job openings? Because I've got 2 or 3 people I'm working with on helping them find an opportunity." They said, "Absolutely." So I was not necessarily networking for myself. I was networking for my network. And I think oftentimes that's a good thing for us to think about. Always, I just had someone call me the other day wanting to know if I knew someone at a hotel in Miami. I said, "Absolutely, and here the person is, and I'll put you in contact." Now, I didn't need that relationship with the person at the hotel in Miami, but I was able to share it with my network. So you always want a strong network, and it's not just necessarily networking conferences or professional conferences. I network at the grocery store. I network. I mean,
That's
Don
not
laughs,
hard
he
to
knows
believe
me.
about you, by the way. Not at all.
But I mean, you are surprised at how many people. I met the number 2 or number 3 person at Marriott standing in line at the grocery store because I just brought up a conversation. So networking, I think your social network, your hand-to-hand social network, not on Facebook and all of that, but just being out there. It's like, what didn't Woody Allen say? 90% of life is showing up.
Showing up, right?
So just show up, and if you have social anxiety, then just say in your head, "Fake it till you make it." The first 2 or 3 times you may have anxiety, but once you get practice, you're good and you're gone. So think about just network with anybody you see. Strike up a conversation. You'll never know where it leads. That's how I got
Absolutely.
married.
That's a whole other story, a whole other hour, right?
Uh, there are some people for whom that just makes anxiety. It makes the rash cover your entire body rather than just selective parts. Okay? So you can network online. Find somebody who could be your wing person, and can, be the one. Bring Marcia to an event. You won't have to say a word. I take it from me. I've done that for years. So yeah, there are people like Marcia out there who actually enjoy networking. And so if you find what I call sort of like an ultimate connector, the person who really gets off and gets satisfaction from making introductions, they're out there. I have somebody like that over my entire career who I would go to a trade show. She would be there and say, "Oh, Don, I need you to meet so and so. They've got a problem and I know you can solve it. Let me introduce you." I had a half a dozen over the years new clients. I never had to say a word. This made her feel good. It made me feel great. And I could be the introvert that I really am. So sometimes it's finding someone to pair up with that will sort of compensate for the fact that you're an old curmudgeon like me.
Great advice. We're going to step off of your very last comment of being an old curmudgeon to discrimination, age bias, not a funny topic, but something that so many of our listeners have experienced, will experience, we all will at some point. And it comes down to, right, I'm over, pick your age, 50, 60, whatever it is. And my perception is this is my boulder in the road. This is the thing that's going to keep me from getting noticed, getting interviewed, getting hired. And I'm going to turn to Jade and we're going to work across the virtual room here and say, Jade, what's going on there? What's your insight and what's your advice to people who are experiencing or will experience this?
I would say two things. So the first one would be every single person, I would say 1 out of every 4 people ask me that question. Am I too old? And I ask them, how young are you? And they tell me, and I say, you know what? Pretty much everyone I speak to is that age. There's a reason you are an executive because you have experience and you have a gravitas around you that younger people just don't have. They have that wisdom. You paid for that wisdom with a few wrinkles or two, and that's okay. Everyone is in that boat. So if that company is looking for wisdom and experience and someone who knows how to get results and carry themselves and conduct themselves accordingly, they're going to want you. So that would be the first thing I say to that. And the second thing, I think it was it was Ronald Reagan, and I admit I was a bit young for it, but I've heard the stories. When they asked, they asked him in an interview about his age and the candidate, and he said, "I will not let my opponent's youth get in the way, and I'm not going to discriminate against him because of his youth." I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that's what he said because he was a little bit aged. So what? He was a great guy. He delivered results. People love him, and if you've got in your back pocket, that's all you have to worry. That's all you have to do or worry about. If you make it a big deal, they will make it a big deal.
Well said. So Don, let's shift over to you, and I'm going to frame the question a little bit. So we heard what Jade said, powerful stuff. When it comes down to projecting what she said through your collateral, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, networking, how do you work through or around the age thing so that it's your competitive advantage? How do you do that?
It's a good question that I'm going to avoid for a second. Okay?
Your seconds.
I just got something across my desk earlier this morning.
Okay.
Bureau of Labor Statistics says that unemployed job hunters age 55 to 64 spend a median of 34.5 weeks looking for work versus 22.2 weeks for workers of all ages. So it's not a perception, it's a reality that it takes older workers longer. Why? Because they're more senior, there are fewer senior jobs, and a lot of people competing for them. And in a recent AARP survey of workers 45 and older, 3/4 cited age discrimination as a reason they weren't confident they would find a new job in short order. So when you're of a certain age and you're not getting a response, as I said earlier, people fill in the blank. Oh, it must be because of my age. It may have nothing to do with your age. It may have to do with a terrible resume. It may have to do with a LinkedIn profile that's not optimized. Nothing to do with age. But when you're of a certain age, it's easy to blame age on why it is you're not getting the job. So here's what I recommend. I know in the Boston area where I am, every year the Boston Globe puts out a list of the 100 top companies to work for in Massachusetts, and they do it by categories. If I were looking for a job, I would go to one of those companies. Why? Because they're the least likely companies to be discriminating based on age. Go to the companies that have a reputation for wanting the best candidate irrespective of age. GE isn't going to hire you in a senior level role. Why? Because they've got folks lined up to take those roles who have been working in GE for years. Go to smaller companies. Go to companies where you can do multiple jobs that you've already done in your past. And so you can wear many hats. That will give you a competitive advantage. So look for ways to turn age as an asset rather than as a liability.
Thank you. Marcia, anything to add to what Don and Jay just said?
Well, it's interesting because I just coached someone, 65 years old, and we got him a CEO job. So Al said to me, he said, Marcia, what if the age thing comes up? And I said, here's what you tell him. That the only way you can ever take a safe shortcut is when you already know the long way home. And what you bring is, you know, at your age as a CEO where all the safe shortcuts are. So your throughput time in terms of achievement, in terms of getting outcomes, is going to be a lot faster because you know how to get there faster. He got the job. And we didn't make age an issue. We made talent and competencies and attributes the issue. And he got the job, and he still has the job. And he has done exactly what he said. He has brought this company so far in the last 2 years, even he's amazed. But he put all of his prior experience into place, and he achieved the outcomes much faster. And I think that if we, as like Jade said, if we focus on age, they focus on age. If we focus on outcomes, attributes, what we've done, what we do in our community, age is not an issue.
It's a wonderful
So
message.
what you're filled up with spills over, okay? And if you're concerned with age, if you're concerned with gender, if you're concerned with sexual orientation, those things somehow spill over. And so the interviewer may not be concerned about any of this until they sense you are. So clear it out of your head, and you'll be a lot better off.
Great advice. They have to see you, is what it comes down to, right?
Are you talking about me personally?
No, not you. No, not you.
Oh, okay.
All right. We have gone past the top of the hour. We have covered a lot of territory here. Thank you all so much for your time and attention, Jade and Don and Marcia. And I'm going to thank all of you for your attention who've listened and asked such marvelous questions. I got to a lot of them, not to all of them. That's what that link is for, guys. If you've got things you still have to ask or have now occurred to you, or they're highly individualized, and ultimately you're at that VP plus level and you'd like some direct personal help getting to where you want to go next, please follow that link. You have people like Jade and Don and Marcia and so many others who have got the experience and the wisdom, and they make it sound so clear and simple. You know that's because they know what they're talking about, and they've got the experience, and they can distill it down to areas that you can focus on in pieces and then pull it together and have a plan and implement it and get to where we want to go. That's how they make it happen. So follow that link. Thank you all again. Any final thoughts from the panel before we officially wrap up this hour? Marcia, anything? We went over, but I want to keep going a bit.
I would say, and this may sound counterintuitive, enjoy the process.
Okay.
Enjoy the process. Don't make it feel like work. Enjoy the process.
Well said,
I'd
Don.
say, based on what we talked about earlier in terms of your network, reach out to any of the three of us on LinkedIn. If you have questions that were unanswered, ask us. Make us part of your networks. I assure you that the three of us probably have enough connections that at some point we can help you. And if we can, we'd be happy to.
Terrific. Jade.
I would say take the opportunity, whether it's with us or not. Obviously, I'm biased towards us, but get it done right the first time, because a lot of people, they think about cost or whatnot, but you have to really think of opportunity costs, because there are two ways to miss an opportunity. One, I won't go into the other one, but the first one is you don't know about it. So if you're not doing the right actions and you're not positioning yourself, or you're not saying the right things, you're gonna miss an opportunity, and that's gonna cost you more. So just handle it as soon as you can. Get it done right the first time. It's gonna save you time, money, self-esteem, well-being, and everything under the sun. And
Terrific.
enjoy the process.
There you
I
go.
would I would like to add one more thing. It's
Sure.
like going to a foreign country. Get yourself a tour guide.
I love it. Absolutely. Thank you all again. Thank you all for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing everyone at the next session of ExecuNet Masterclass. Bye for now.